Thanks for coming back for the second half of our conversation with Mary Catherine Kunze and James Carbary as we talk about telling your business story. And I have so many questions about this that I could sit down probably for hours and just mine your brain, but don't worry, I know we don't have that long. So imagine that I'm a new entrepreneur, and that doesn't require a lot of imagination because I am a new entrepreneur. What steps would you take me through to help me determine what my brand story is and who needs to hear it, Mary Catherine?
Well, I think it's kind of similar to just knowing your why again, and what makes you different. I think you need to find, really think through, is this something that I'm passionate about? Because it's going to be hard, I think. Yeah, I'm not really an expert in this question. Maybe you go first.
Well, seriously, I mean, I've worked with some e-commerce brands. I haven't worked with local ones, but I've worked with e-commerce brands that sell business to consumer stuff. I've thought about doing that. If I just called you up and said, what's the first thing I need to do to start telling people what I'm doing, what would you say?
I would say that the first thing you need to do is, once again, find your why and, what makes you different.
Your story sounds a little bit, and this is probably an overblown parallel, but are you familiar with Sarah Blakely, the woman who founded Spanx, the women's underwear company? For years, she sold fax machines door to door. And she said that within the first couple of weeks of having that job, she knew two things. Number one, she loved sales. And number two, she did not want to sell fax machines her entire life. She wanted to sell something she really enjoyed. And I think it took her like 7 years to move from fax machines to intimate apparel. But when she did, she had she had the skill of sales, but she also had something she really loved. And that just came to as you were talking. It sounds similar. James, what do you say when you sit down with people who are launching a business and they want to tell their story, but maybe they don't even know what their story is? Yeah. What kind of process do you lead them through?
So, Holland, whenever I have these conversations with folks, I always want people to get really, really clear on what it is they do and who they want to serve to a very granular level. So when you hear folks talk about saying, okay, well, I want to serve, business owners. Well, what type of business are you looking to serve? Or they have a software, but they don't really, they're maybe solving their own pain, but they're not really thinking about who is going to be the decision maker for this software on the other end of this thing. So I know that tends to be a problem that I run into when I start businesses. I want to scratch my own itch and solve my own problems. And I've had to learn that I cannot be the only customer of this product for this thing to work. So I've just got to get a lot of clarity around what are the specifics of the market that I'm going to serve. And with Sweetfish, we've identified that our ideal buyer is a VP of marketing at a B2B technology company, typically a B2B SaaS company, which stands for software as a service, that has over 50 employees, but typically not more than 500. And so getting that level of granularity and clarity on who is the type of person that's going to buy your product allows you to then craft stories, craft your messaging that speaks specifically to those types of buyers. Because when you don't know who you're talking to, you just start telling a bunch of vague stories that don't really resonate with anybody because you're trying to reach everybody. And so for us, it was a long journey to get there. We originally thought that we were going to be selling to VPs of sales because I just wrote a book called Content-Based Networking based on the strategy of using content collaboration as a means of connecting with your ideal buyers. And that's a big part of what we do at Sweetfish. It's what we facilitate through the podcast that we produce. But I thought, man, a sales leader would absolutely want this. Well, we tried selling it to sales leaders for 6 months and the story just wasn't resonating. They weren't getting it. And come to find out, they don't have budget for anything except headcount and technology. They don't have budget for things like podcasting. That's a marketing thing. So we realized, okay, we need to start talking to marketers and sell this to marketers. So we thought CMOs were going to be the people that we sold to. But we realized that the CMO is really more high level, strategic, and really more focused on the brand's story and the brand's narrative, where the VP of marketing is really the role within the organization that can actually buy what we do, because they're tasked within going and executing and telling that brand story under the direction of the CMO. The CMO doesn't actually make the purchase decision for a service like ours. It's that next level VP of marketing that's making that decision. So it's a journey. You're not going to get this stuff figured out on day one, but by having as many conversations as you possibly can with the marketplace, you're going to eventually figure out who your sweet spot customer is. And once you figure that out, now you can start to tell really catered and personalized stories to that audience, because you know that those are the people that have dollars for what you're doing.
Wow. I really appreciate that. I guess I do think about it, but I'm not a business person. As a teacher, I have to consider that I am not my only consumer. And I really appreciate that, James, because, what we do in education is we modify and adjust. We differentiate. We think about our consumer, which is our student. But I appreciate that in the business mindset to think about who is going to be purchasing my product and how do I need to maybe differentiate a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's some horrifying statistic about the number of small businesses that fail in the first 5 years, and it's almost all of them. And the number one reason, and I want to say it's 80% of the reason that small businesses fail, is that they simply make a product that the entrepreneur wants, but that the marketplace doesn't want to buy. Mm-hmm. They just make something the entrepreneur thinks is cool, and then he or she goes out and tries to sell it without having determined that other people are willing to part with money in order to buy that product. Yeah.
And I think that you've got to be real careful there too, because, Airbnb was trying to do something that I don't think very many people at all had tried to do. I think one other company had tried to do it and they failed because it was a very foreign concept and not something that people knew that they even wanted. The idea of staying a stranger's home was terrifying to most people until Airbnb made it okay. The same thing with Uber. And you see a lot of category creators that are creating brand new categories, charting brand new territory, telling us about problems we didn't even know we had. And that takes an entirely different skill set and a next level ability to tell stories and to craft your narrative, because you're painting a solution that nobody knows that they need. And I've found myself in that position throughout a lot of my entrepreneurial career. I don't like diving into really competitive spaces. When we got into podcast production, nobody else was doing what we do for the people that we actually serve. I still don't think that there are a lot of companies doing what we do that serve the audience that we serve. But now, in becoming a media company, a podcast first media company, there's definitely nobody that I know of that has our business model. And so I think there's that some level of uniqueness, and scratching my own itch to a certain degree, wondering what would I want, has allowed me to differentiate and to be unique. But I can't separate that from truly understanding what is the need of my buyer and how can I serve that need. So it might be a new way of serving that need, but I've got to make sure that I'm communicating, that our team is communicating through our marketing messaging, through our sales messaging, that what we do may be a unique approach, but it's solving a problem that they know that they want to solve.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Mary Catherine, James is kind of talking a little bit about data in the business story. And I want to hear from you, Mary Catherine. How has your ability to look at what the customer is going to purchase, how has that changed and evolved what you do in Uniquely MC?
So I've recently gone down this road with a mentor. He always says, you can't change what isn't measured. the things that are measured are where you see change. And so just all encompassing, like as business as a whole, but also in knowing my customer. I recently sent out a survey trying to figure out who my customer is. And I know it is women, but there's some women who have bought, half a dozen bags from me or more. And so I really want to interview them and be like, why do you keep buying from us? I think that the world is very much so more environmentally conscious, and just I think the innovation of using upcycled fabrics and different elements really speaks to women, and also knowing that it's a limited supply. I can only really make one of a kind because I only have this small piece of fabric, and there's no way I can get a hold of more.
Right.
And
that's
so,
a little bit like what James was talking about, that unique piece, hence in your name.
Exactly. So we're trying to stay true to our name. But I think when someone buys one of our products, they feel like they're getting something really special. Even though I make hundreds of the same style, there's no two that are combined in the same way. We combine fabrics differently. We put a different zipper on than the other one. Like it's all unique, just like we are. And so I think that we have a lot of people who buy them as gifts, a lot of husbands buying them for their wives. We've even had men buy our fanny packs and backpacks. So even though that's not our main market, like it's been really cool to see guys appreciate what we do and want to support as well. Yeah, I think data plays a huge part in that. And it's funny, I'm not a detail person, but I am when it comes to my business. And so like with every sale, I write down like a little note, like, oh, this person's from this city and she bought it for her daughter, or, stuff like that. And so I need to come up with a more efficient way to categorize that, where it's not just a note, but
that's
yeah.
Great. I love that. Keeping notes. What about you, James? What do you think would be an important role that data plays?
Oh man. I think data can make things real to people. And so just as I think about the data that's involved in our own story, it's a couple different numbers, right? It's the fact that most people spend 90,000 hours of their life at work. And then the other piece of data is that from that Deloitte study that said that 87% of Americans have no passion for their job. And so I think data can help you identify problems. And if your solution is a solve to those problems, then that becomes a really interesting pairing to use data to highlight and to really give credibility to the problem that you're trying to solve. And then you can come in and position your story as the answer to that.
I love that. Having the data be the solution to the problem, which again, that's just brilliant. I'm appreciate Mary Catherine and James, the idea of that part, because sometimes we think data being so dry and it's not that exciting, but you're right, there can be some real benefits to that.
So just to jump a little bit, Mary Catherine, how's your business evolved over the years? I know you said you've been doing this 6 years. How's it evolved?
Yeah, so it was 6 years part-time and then now 3 years full-time. It started off with me just making a few bags a month and trying to sell them at the antique store, actually. That was the first place I started selling. And then it kind of grew from there with us having a strong farmers market. It has grown from 1 block to 4 blocks. It's called Soda City Farmers Market, plug. But anyways, that's where I first started selling at a quote unquote show. I still consider that like a show where I go and I set up and I'm there and then I leave. And so that really created like a consistent rhythm for me to make income. I had my studio space in my apartment at one time, and then at my brother's old room. That was fun, being at my parents'. And then I eventually decided to rent a space at Taps Art Center, where it was like a collective of artists where you could rent space. And so my presence just kind of grew with each step that I would take. And whenever I went full time, I noticed that the shows is where I made most of my income and most impact. And so I started signing up for shows all over the Southeast and traveling. And me and my mom would travel together, and we would stay at Airbnbs. And it was just a lot. It's just been a lot of fun. But anyways, the shows are really fun. I always say it's like a grand opening, like, we're only here for 3 days, and like everyone, there's like this anticipation, and then right when the excitement's wearing off, it's like, goodbye. It's grown from me just doing like a few and just as a hobby, and into, I'm selling in my busy seasons, I'm selling up to 200 bags a month.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely changed in every way. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. Did you imagine at the beginning that 200 bags a month was going to be a realistic possibility?
No, not at all. Yeah, it's definitely been like a building. And I'm so glad that I didn't know that that's where I was going, in a way. When I was first starting off, like, I didn't want this, and I think it was God gently getting me to this place. And so it's just been really empowering just to see, like, I remember that moment when it was like, all right, I'm stepping fully into this. It was like, God, am I going to sink or swim? Like, I just felt like, are you setting me up for failure? Because I feel like I'm stepping into something that's impossible. And he has proven me wrong, and shown me that he can work through all those things. And he's surprised me in so many different ways with how he's provided for me.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and you've even evolved recently with all of this COVID-19 issues. What are you making right now, Mary Catherine?
Well, I'm making a lot of face masks right now, which are not as good as the hospital grade ones. What are they, N95 or something like that?
Right, yeah.
But a lot of people are wanting them because something's better than nothing. And what I've been reading is that if you are sick and you wear one, it helps you kind of keep your germs to yourself. And they're reusable. You can wash them and use them again, which I think it just helps in a small way, using a gift that I have to help.
Yeah.
You always think, like, what are my gifts, really good for sometimes? And it's like, oh, wow, I'm really able to help in a tangible way with this skill.
Absolutely. And I love that. And again, kind of going back to what James was saying, is that, when you have a problem, you have a solution, and this is something that's needed, and they're absolutely adorable. So, I know this is a yucky situation in our world right now, but these are maybe a way to say that, you can add a little beauty in your day.
Yeah, so we try to keep things uplifting, and even in hard times, it's like, yeah, why not wear a mask with polka dots on it, or why not wear a mask with hot air balloons on it?
There you go.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, James, you founded a media company, and what media channels are going to ramp up for business storytelling in the future? And I'm going to ask you to prognosticate a little bit.
Yeah. So I think obviously I'm very bullish on podcasting. We're riding the wave of it right now. I think the reason podcasting is having a moment and will continue to have a moment in storytelling is because you can consume that content passively, meaning you can, while when it's not in the age of coronavirus, when you're driving to work or taking the subway into work, coming home, whether you're mowing the yard or doing dishes, you're listening to podcasts. I see audiobooks being another way. When I released my book earlier this year, I made sure that there was going to be an audio version of the book. And it turns out a massive chunk of the book's sales in the first quarter this year are coming from Audible. And so I think that reinforces that idea that people are listening to content a lot more than they have in the past, especially now that it's on demand and you're not having to listen to kind of the traditional radio that has commercials for 75% of the time, and then 25% you get what you want. So that is a media, audio is a media that I think everybody should be looking at in order to tell their stories, just because it is convenient for the consumer of that content. And it makes it really easy for them to consume that content passively. The problem with audio, especially with podcasting, is that it's really hard to grow an audience there. Not everybody is listening to podcasts yet, but everyone watches videos. And so a medium that I'm really excited about and that we're about to start investing in heavily in our business is funny video. We talk about wanting to bring levity and a lighter spirit, especially in a time like this when everybody's stressed and the economy is being impacted, people's health is being impacted. This is a crazy time, and I think because so many people are scrolling on social media all day, every day, figuring out how can you tell comedic stories? How can you make people laugh? And when you do that, you end up winning people to you when you're relatable and you can make someone laugh, whether it's at one of something they do or something that they know to be true about themselves. I just think that's a recipe for really great brand affinity, and I think it's a great way to tell stories. So I would say audio and then funny video are the two mediums that I'm really excited about today.
Well, I definitely can appreciate that. Holland and I, our first episode, our podcast episode for 2020 was on humor. And yes, we had James Carey, which is close to your name, from the UK, and Harrison Brookie, who is a improv teacher here in South Carolina. And so I completely agree with you about the need for humor and its healing effects. And what media do you think is going to fall away?
Oh, man. I just think TV is becoming less and less relevant. Sports are really the only thing that are I think, allowing the traditional kind of television model to work because it's live. And even in the midst of this coronavirus, I notice, at least in the circles of friends that I hang around, we're all getting our news from our phone and from content that's being shared on social. We're not necessarily watching it on TV and getting it there. So I think TV is going to be in a world of hurt. I don't know if it'll be necessarily 5 years from now, but 10 years, I would not be shocked if TV is completely extinct, because especially with, Netflix and Hulu and channels like this that are giving us on demand what we want when we want it.
Right.
I just think that that's too powerful for the traditional model of TV to combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we saw that with the newspaper, the actual physical newspaper, that media.
You're exactly right.
Is, what do they say? The obituaries is their subscription list.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's sad because, in many cases, they are a great avenue, especially now, getting information and that kind of thing. But I really appreciate what you're sharing. I think you're spot on with with your projection.
I don't want to look at that and think doom and gloom. And because when you think about something like that dying, that's people that have invested entire careers in building that skill set. But what's so great is communication across the board. And so the spirit of what made newspapers work was the written word. Well, the written word is not going anywhere.
Right.
You've just got to adapt to how do people consume the written word today. The content that we write for our business is in the form of blog posts and LinkedIn status updates get in front of tens of thousands of people, and probably more so than your local newspaper would, just because they're if they're serving an area that is a town of 20,000 people and only X percentage of them actually get the newspaper. So you look at just, okay, what's the modern execution of this skill set? And so with TV, that skill set of being able to create captivating television absolutely translates to creating videos on, for Instagram or for YouTube or Facebook. And so I try to look at it from a glass half full kind of mentality. And I think that a lot of people in those industries, in those places that are, going away, can absolutely pivot and start to roll out that skill set in a 2020 environment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's the problem solution, the innovation, the entrepreneurship mindset. And I agree with you. I don't think we're going to be at a loss. I think things are just going to continue to reinvent themselves. So I appreciate that.
Okay, last quick question. What's a metaphor to help us understand how to tell a business story?
Who's going first? I can go. Well, for me, I think a good metaphor would be that you signed up for a marathon, and then halfway through, you unknowingly realize you signed up for an ultra marathon, and it's got a lot of detours and diverse terrain. And sometimes it looks really flat and boring, and sometimes all of a sudden you're climbing a mountain. So that would be my metaphor.
I love that, Mary Catherine. That's awesome.
That is so true. I love that. James.
Oh man, I have that is a great question, and I have no clue. I love Mary Catherine's metaphor there. I think I'll piggyback off of hers. Our COO in our business now says that if you knew how hard it was going to be, if you could fast forward and see what it would be like 10 years from now, you would not voluntarily sign up for the road that you're about to walk down. But you're certainly glad that you did whenever you get there. And so I love that metaphor, because I just do not think, in the age of, everybody wanting to become an entrepreneur, I think we need more people explaining and telling people the reality of how hard it is, that this is not something that you snap your fingers and it happens overnight. This takes consistent hard work, consistent pivoting, consistent figuring out answers to problems, and continuing to move forward, and not paying yourself some months, or paying being the lowest paid person on your team for a significant amount of time, so that you can continue to innovate and try to solve the problem that you're trying to solve better. So I'll piggyback on Mary Catherine's metaphor there, because I thought it was a great one.
It is a great one. But, I was thinking about this yesterday, that we used to live in a country where virtually everybody was an entrepreneur, right? I mean, you had a farm, or you had a fabric shop, or you had a restaurant, or you were the town lawyer, or you had the pharmacy, or whatever. Everybody owned their little piece of the town. And there might be a few people who worked for someone else, but typically if that person worked for someone else, their spouse had some little business idea going, at least on the side. And the idea that we were all supposed to go in herds of people to these huge edifices and sit in little cubicles all day is really a fairly contemporary idea. And, whether or not that's something that human beings were made and meant to do is a bigger question.
Yeah, that's a good thought, Holland. You kind of spoke about this a little bit, James, when you talk about your mountain and just your whole Sweet Fish's mantra type thing with their mission statement. Why don't you repeat that again?
Yeah, so our why is to inspire people to own their career, because 90,000 hours of your life shouldn't suck. And then our mountaintop, where we're going, is to try to reach 1 million people every single day with the content that we produce. So I think, just having clarity around those two things. Why do you exist? And for us, we don't want people's lives to suck, and so we're trying to create content that helps them get better at work so that they can enjoy those 90,000 hours.
Okay, before we go really fast, first of all, James, tell us how to get in touch with you, Sweet Fish, and about your book, where to buy it. And then Mary Catherine, would you please tell us how to get in touch with you and how to buy your handbags?
Yeah, so you can go to sweetfishmedia.com and learn more about the business. I'm really active on LinkedIn, so you can just search James Carbary on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you there, Carbary. And then the book is Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. You can just search my name or Content-Based Networking in Amazon or Audible and check out the book there. Thank you.
Mary Catherine?
So in this current situation, I am trying to send everyone to my Etsy shop. If you search in the engine, Uniquely MC, all together, no spaces, you can find my shop. Also, you can find me on social media such as Instagram and Facebook. My Instagram handle is uniquely_MC. And also, if you want to sign up for our email list and stay in the loop with where you can find us next, when things get back to normal, we'll be picking back up our shows and traveling. And so we may be in a city near you. And you can be on our birthday club, which is so cool. So you can email me at www.uniquelymcconnect@gmail.com.
All right.
That's awesome.
For our unseen guests at the table, next week we are going to have a conversation I'm really, really looking forward to with Dr. Mark Ferguson from the University of South Carolina and Scott Luton, founder of Supply Chain Now. We'll be talking about supply chains and the stories that are cropping up around supply chains now. Who knew this was going to be a thing, right? But while you wait, please leave us a review. Rate us on iTunes, become a subscriber at theafterwordpodcast.com. It all helps us keep the conversations going. And as always, remember that you are welcome at our table.